Everyone, it's Tawney. Today's video, we are spilling some tea. We are going to be talking about brands that I no longer use because I find boring. And I feel like this could technically be mean in a way. And I'm sorry if anybody thinks of it to be mean. Maybe I am intentionally trying to be mean about this and like get brands to come to their senses. But we all know that they don't listen to us. They just do what they want. Like Becca comes out with a foundation that's just water. Who was it? Beauty Blender made a comment that was like horribly offensive a couple years ago. Oh, it's just, there's a lot. I want to talk about 5 different brands. I think I have 5. I have a little script right here of what I'm going to be talking about. And I think I have 5 brands that I want to talk about. And I wanted to make this sort of more in-depth and more nitty-gritty than just like, oh, I don't like Morphe, I don't like Jeffree Star, I don't like Jaclyn Hill. Like, I wanted to make it more like, okay, what are brands you wouldn't expect me to not care about, not use, brands that aren't really interesting anymore. And I wanted to really dive deep into what brands are not really like talked about enough to make me ever want to purchase their products. So for the first one I want to talk about, I talked about this in my last video. It was using makeup that I don't ever use, and it's BH Cosmetics. And I had used one of their, it was like an all green 9-pan palette. And I had used that in the video. And I talked about like, I bought it on sale at Ulta because I don't normally shop from the website because nothing about them screams like, you need to buy this. And lately, I've been feeling that it's kind of a brand that they're so pushy with old products and products that like were good at the time, but we're just ready for something new, that they just can't get anything to grab our attention. They can't keep us into the brand. And they did a rebrand last year sometime in 2022, I believe. They rebranded themselves. But I don't feel like they did anything different. They just said, we're going to rebrand. And then they just kept doing the same old thing. So I don't really know how that worked for them. I'd like to know like the logistics and stuff. And like, did it really turn out the way they expected it to? Did it really help them? Because it doesn't seem like they changed their tactics. They just said, we're going to rebrand, kept doing what they were doing, and hoped that nobody would notice and just buy their stuff because they rebranded. They've come out with several different collaborations over the past year, or the past couple years, I would say. And some of them were interesting. Some of them were just kind of eh. There was one whenever I was like looking up all the different collaborations that they had that I was like, oh, I would actually pick up this palette like currently, but I just didn't know who the influencer was. So I wasn't really interested in trying them out or like looking into it anymore. So I just kind of like let it fizzle, which is why this brand is on this list and preferably number 1. I had a lot to say about them. And they had come out with a Doja Cat collaboration over the past year or 2, I believe. They put out so little product and do so little to grab my attention that it's hard for me to even keep a timeline of what their products were, because it all just kind of clumps into one big glob, and I just can't like stretch it out to like, okay, this date, this date, this date. Like it just doesn't work for me. But they had come out with a collaboration that had, I believe, some face products, some brushes, and an eyeshadow palette. It was a pretty large eyeshadow palette. And I know that a lot of influencers do that. Like if you look at the Morphe collaborations with any influencer, celebrity, YouTuber, TikToker, you name it, they're always very large palettes, like 30-pan palettes or somewhere in that ballpark. And they're always rainbow colored. And I don't know if it's just something that like everybody wants a rainbow palette, because in my mind, when I first started makeup, I wanted a palette with every color in it. I wanted to be able to go from brown to red to green to blue in one palette, so that I could just spend my money on one specific thing. And I don't know if this is the way they're thinking, because that's the way they thought growing up, or the way they thought whenever they got into makeup. But there's no like, I just don't feel like there's ever like a color story to the products. And I feel like that's the same with this Doja Cat collaboration, is it just didn't do anything for me. And the brushes looked incredibly cheap. Like I wanted to like them because the gold seems really pretty. The pink, like the pink hairs and stuff on the brushes, whatever you want to call them, they looked really nice, but the collaboration itself just really fell flat. And I'm not really a Doja Cat fan anyway to like be like, oh my gosh, I have to buy this to support her. I don't really feel that way. So it was kind of just very lackluster. And then I don't know if it was before or after, Iggy Azalea came out with a collaboration with them, and I like so heavily wanted to support her, but her collection looked interesting. It looked very 90s. It looked very like sort of leaning Y2K where everything was like that see-through bright colors, very neon-y, but like still that like see-through packaging. There are some brushes in that. I believe there were like 3 9-pan palettes, maybe some face products if I'm not mistaken. I'm vaguely remembering all of these from whenever I did some research and then through my memory of like, oh yeah, they did have a collaboration together. And I wanted to support it, but the the colors that were released with the launch, like within the palettes, looked so boring and just meh, that there was nothing like drawing me in. And I feel like that's kind of the problem with a lot of these brands, is that they do very little and expect it to be like enough to keep all of our attention. And it's like, that doesn't work for everybody. It barely works for anyone as is. So it's like, what makes them think that their brand is special enough to get us by doing the bare minimum? Like, that's just where I'm at. Next up is Florence, which is Millie Bobby Brown's makeup line. I believe it's Florence by Mills is like the full name for it. I can never remember. It's just a really pretty lavender packaging that Millie Bobby Brown makes. A lot of her products were geared toward teenagers or in that kind of tween age, which was like 11 to 12, 10 to 12, something like that. And I can understand why it's not specifically geared toward me. I get that. And I'm totally okay with that because like I like seeing people come out with somewhat decent products, like better than Claire's type products, and then gear them toward younger kids so that whenever people go buy presents, they can go and help them get something that's like geared toward them, but not childish, but then also like good quality. Whenever it was first launched, I was like, oh, these are nice, but it's just not like, it's not my thing. Like, I don't like cream blushes, and I didn't really like the way the mascara looked. And then she started doing a bunch of face products that were more like skincare. And I just kept thinking, this is not for me. This is not my, like, everything about it was so like far away from me that I just completely like lost track of the brand. I literally had to Google them to like, for this video, obviously, but to like even know what was going on with the brand because I have heard nothing. And I like, when I see their end cap at Ulta, I usually just keep walking and look for something better. And I feel bad because I do like Millie Bobby Brown. But again, this brand is not for me and I can understand that. So I just move on. Just like we're going to be moving on now. Next up is Tarte. Now, Tarte used to be a brand that everybody had to get their hands on. When they came out with the Amazonian clay blushes, everyone had to have one. When they came out with the Shape Tape concealer, it was like, it was popular for so long that it was one of those products that like, when people used it, you just knew that's Shape Tape. You don't even need to tell me. I can tell by the doe foot. I can tell by the purple packaging on the outside of the tube. I know this is Tarte Shape Tape. And then they came out with their foundation launch and totally ruined it. I think that was like the tipping point of the brand. Like, as if they weren't already going down at that point, that was when they reached their peak of like, there's nowhere up from here. And they've come out with several different like sister brands where like they're kind of the head brand and then they have several underneath. They're very like kid themed and it's not geared for me. Again, it's one of those brands. It's not for me. It's very sugary, very sweet, very like innocent. And not to say that I'm not here for that because I totally think that is a place for that, especially in makeup, but it's just not something I'm looking for, especially at the price point that they're charging, because Tarte is one of those brands that's like teetering on drugstore and high end, but it's on the high end side of it that like when every product is $30, I'm not going to be picking up a lot of products all at once. I'm going to get like one every couple months. Like that's how it's going to work. And I've just never really like looked into them. I always thought a lot of their eyeshadow palettes were very boring, regardless of the packaging. Like the packaging was pretty, but the palettes just did nothing. And I don't know how the quality was because I, again, never tried any of them. But to me, they just seemed incredibly lackluster and very dull looking. So I just didn't even want to put forth the effort to try them because it's like there's other brands doing so much better. Why would I look into Tarte? And then they recently came out with 2 new palettes, I believe for the holiday season. And I saw a little bit of like fluttering chatter on YouTube about like, are these good? Can we find dupes for these? Like really trying to like almost, if you want them, go get them. If not, we'll find alternatives that you don't have to support the brand, which I appreciate in the YouTube space or in the beauty space in general. It's just whenever people try and find ways to either use what you have or buy something cheaper so that everybody can still participate, even if it doesn't have the Tarte name to it. But I was kind of like, oh, these are pretty. And then I kind of like forgot about them. Like I saw a picture online and I was like, oh yeah, they came out with those. Those are nice. And then I just like kept scrolling and it was just like, okay, whatever. It just doesn't do anything for me. Next up is Beauty Blender, and I feel like Beauty Blender did this to themselves. They, a couple years ago, had they had made a comment, and I can't remember for the life of me what the comment was, but they made some comment that was like super offensive. Because I know that it was very tasteless, whatever they said. It was just very like, you didn't even need to bring it up. Don't talk like that. Like, why are you even, like, it's just like, why do you even need to tell people this? Like, don't, like, why do you even feel this way and for, like, at a first? But then again, why are you even bringing this up to, like, make yourselves look bad? But ever since then, the brand has really kind of fallen for everybody in the beauty space. They just kind of like had a bad taste in their mouths about the brand. And I just don't feel like the brand ever recovered. I think they came out with a concealer, but I couldn't find any information about it. But maybe I just didn't dig deep enough. Because I just kind of scratched the surface on a lot of these brands. I kind of knew what I wanted to talk about, and I just needed a little bit more of an oomph to it. I know they came out with that like bounce foundation that was kind of like in a square, and then you squeeze it and it like dripped down, where you could kind of put like your beauty blender like rested in a little like cutout in the packaging of the foundation, and then I guess it collected the product. I don't know how it worked. Tati did a video about it one time, and she couldn't understand the concept of the packaging, and that perfectly sums up how I feel about it. It's just like, what is even the point of this? Like, it just seems like it's going to be messy, and it's just not worth dealing with. And like, for a brief period of time, I was interested in trying out the foundation, and then nobody talked about it, and then I just kind of forgot about it. And like, the Beauty Blender is one of those things that it was so revolutionary when it first came out, but then other brands did it better. Real Techniques has a really good one. Shop Miss A has a really good one for like $2, and you can like stock up on them. L'Oreal has a nice one. Elf has a good one. I use one from Eco Tools. I think it's either Eco Tools or I think it's Real Techniques maybe. This is the face and body one, and it is ginormous, and it is perfect for blending in my makeup in like 5 seconds flat. But that brand is just one of those that like, they don't really do anything. They just keep pushing the beauty blender, and it's just like, okay, what are you gonna do next? Everybody else has one. We don't need to pay 20 some dollars to get a beauty blender from you. We can pay like $10 to buy one at the drugstore. So what are you going to do? And I feel like the brand is like one step away. Like, if people really jump off the beauty blender and go to something else, they'll shut down by the end of the year. Like, there's no, last but not least, we have a brand that I have purchased in the past and then hardly used any of their products. It is Stila. Now, if you're not familiar with Stila, they have a really nice eyeliner. They used to have the shimmer something eye glitter thingies, but they were the shimmer ones. Those were the first ones to come out, and they were like revolutionary. Nobody did it as good as Stila did. Nobody could even come close to the way Stila did it, and it was one of those, they could only go, like, they were at their height, and it was like, how do we improve from there? Then they came out with the glitter ones, and the glitter ones were not as good, and people were definitely noticing that they were not as good. I tried some of them, and I couldn't get the hang of the shimmer one, but the glitter ones just weren't quite as good. And then I believe they came out with some other ones. They were like holographic or something. And they were just kind of like, oh, hey, we put these out. And people were like, oh, okay. And then that was all it ever was. Like, they tried to push them a lot on like the beauty community. And the beauty community was just like, no, we're good. And I know there are some other indie brands that have come out with some really nice products similar to that. So it's like Stila's just kind of fallen to the wayside because a lot of the other brands have done other stuff to keep the brand going. Stila has an eyeliner that's good, and then they've kind of just like, they're clinging on to that for dear life. And I just think it's one of those brands that needs to do something. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. And I think that with a lot of these brands. Let me know if there's any other brands you want me to talk about in the comment section down below. I'm thinking about doing a part 2, or maybe this is a part 2 to a different video. I don't know. I talk about a lot of brands I don't like because I like talking crap. I like spilling the tea. But if you want to see another video from me, definitely let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ring that notification bell down below so you get notified on when I upload the next video. Stay tuned for that one, guys, and I will see you then. Bye.